Hello, welcome to All About Kids, the program focusing on the interests of children and young people and some of the issues affecting them. Agriculture is a major industry in Minnesota. Our guest today, Al Withers, Project Director of Minnesota Agriculture in the Classroom, a program sponsored by the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, will be talking with classroom teacher MJ Savaiano and editor of Ag in the Classroom magazine, Jan Hoppe. We'll be discussing some of the ways classroom teachers can make agriculture come alive for their students.
Are we having fun?
Al, Jan, Maria, it's a pleasure to have you here today, and we're going to be talking about some of the really interesting things you're doing. It was funny, Al, a couple of months ago when I got unsolicited a copy of the wonderful little newsletter, Minnesota Agriculture, and read about the program that the Agriculture Department is sponsoring. And I was really pleased because so often people forget libraries as part of the loop in terms of education. And so that's how you ended up on this program, and I think you have an enormous amount to talk about what you're doing as program director.
Well, I appreciate the time on the program, and really for the last few years we've tried to, I guess, focus in on helping teachers and kids and other resource people just understand a little bit more about agriculture and how they're all part of it. I think we've lost some of that over the years, and especially as we become a more urban audience, it's a challenge for teachers to try to keep kids and themselves tied to agriculture.
Well, is that one of the reasons that the Department of Agriculture was interested in starting a program with young people? We talk a lot about our rural roots in Minnesota, but the majority of the population is in the metro area.
I think, well, the department started the program and got involved because there was an effort around the country nationally to bring agriculture beyond vocational agriculture and to integrate it into other grade levels. And the department had the energy and the interest back in the middle 80s to start a program. I was hired to start it, and it's really developed into a public-private partnership. We have a lot of sponsors from the private sector, and the department has given valuable support, but the most important thing is that the teachers and the kids and the public has seen the value of the program.
And that's where you come in, Jan, as editor of Agriculture magazine.
That's
and you
true.
work to make it as eye-catching and appealing for youngsters as it is. You have a background in education, and so you're using that sort of expertise.
That's true. I was a classroom teacher for about 10 years, and then I worked in educational publishing for another decade after that. The Ag Mag, however, is not something that I do on my own. It is a group project, and there are two other people that are involved in the development and the writing of it, and then Al is involved as program coordinator. There's also an illustrator and a designer, so it really is a team effort.
So this goes out to the schools. It comes with a teacher's guide, and so it's not just for teachers who are thinking agriculture, it's for use in a whole language program. I was real impressed with some of the math skills that can be developed using this. It's multicultural. There was a wonderful article in one of the recent issues about mung growers in Minnesota. So you really are capturing the interests of not only the educators but of the people in our communities. So it brings agriculture into 1992 in the classroom.
We try very hard to make it relevant to other things that are happening with current events and with just life in the community, so that it is not just an isolated topic, but it's really integrated into the children's lives as well as their school program.
Well, Maria, you are the example of a classroom teacher who is using this in your science classes. How did you find out about it, and how long have you been involved in the program, and what's the reaction of the students you're working with?
I teach at Barton Open School, and we do a lot of thematic education, and all of a sudden this bundle of ag mags arrived at school. And I'm interested in all the resources, having grown up on the farm in southeastern Minnesota. So I looked at them and I thought, oh, this is particularly neat. There was a picture of a threshing machine in there, and I remember threshing from years back. And it just really captured my interest. So we pursued it, and we pursued it again a few months later. And we've been doing it for about 2 years, looking at the Ag Mag. And then doing projects related to it.
And you are in a Minneapolis school. You have children who may never have been on a farm. Do they enjoy this?
They're learning a lot, and they like it too. I liked your article about aqua farming.
Fish farming.
Fish farming, talking about the 90s and how you're bringing that into agriculture and awareness for the children. It's that awareness that they do not have and that they can get through your magazine.
We really started the magazine as the flagship of Ag in the Classroom, and since then we've developed into some other areas in terms of grants and monies to teachers, and also the tie into outcome-based education, because agriculture can transcend across any grade level and any subject area. But the reason the Ag Mag was, I think, developed was because the teachers out there are busy, and because they're not agricultural experts, whether it's 3rd grade or 5th grade or what have you. And a teacher, I think, tends to be shy in bringing out material into their classroom if they're not experts in it or don't feel comfortable. So the Ag Mag format was put together so that the kid would own their own magazine series, and that it would be user-friendly to the teacher, and they could literally get it one day and the next day tie it into language arts or math or science or social studies. It gets tied in well with the study of Minnesota, but like with Maria, the areas of environmental education and science have become much more prevalent in agriculture. And I guess it's our feeling that we need to get the message to kids that even though they're in the city, they eat every day and they're part of agriculture.
Their basic survival depends on agriculture.
I think that's an idea that doesn't just need to get to kids, it needs to get to
adults.
And parents. I would expect you have some reaction from parents, perhaps who grew up in rural Minnesota, or grandparents, and it gives them something to talk about, too, as a family.
Well, I'm not sure about that, but I'm more than likely they probably do. We hosted the Agriculture Day, Minnesota Agriculture Day, and the parents commented how wonderful that was.
You might explain that a minute, the effort there to bring, ag people into the classroom.
Okay, farmers who were, raising soybeans, and I think I had the pork producers in. Let's see, and there may have been one more. Just probably those two. They came in and spoke to the children for 45 minutes and did this in several classes. They had slides and
a spellbound audience.
Exactly. The other group was the sugar beet growers.
Okay.
All right,
Yeah.
so there were 3 groups. And the kids came away with so much information and knowledge. It was in May, right?
March. Ag Day in
March.
March.
Ag Day in March.
March of '92, and we'll do it again this next spring.
It's wonderful. It's just wonderful. Having a contact in the schools will probably help so that these people can go from classroom to classroom and share about turkey growers or pork growers or beef.
Well, again, it gets back to the basic economics. Agriculture is an
And I'm sure
underlying economic issue for Minnesota. The producers, the marketers, you were talking about some very interesting things before the program started, Al, in terms of what's happening in modern agriculture.
Well, I think most of us, and myself too, I'm from Jackson, Minnesota. You grew up in southeastern Minnesota. You grew up in Iowa. Jan grew up in Wisconsin. So we all happen to have ag roots, but a lot of people don't have ag roots. And when you work with the material in the rural Minnesota, they do have that close to their heart feeling in terms of agriculture. When you get to the 2.5 million people or the major metro area, sometimes they don't make any connection to the word agriculture. And Jan, I might have you make a quick comment regarding what we've tried to do with colleges of education and kids that are going to be teachers. And when you use and put the word agriculture on the board, where are they coming from? What are they saying?
That's really been interesting, because one of the purposes in the program is to expand people's idea of what agriculture really is. And for most of us, if we are asked about the word agriculture, what comes to mind immediately are production agriculture types of things, like farms and cows and crops, that sort of thing. We've been doing some presentations with seniors in college who are going to be going out and teaching perhaps the next year, and we find that pattern to be very true of them as well. And what we're really trying to do is expand the idea so that they see agriculture as being biotechnology, so that they see it as being, science, environmental ed. There actually are about 48,000 jobs in agriculture that are not filled. And in this time when people are, looking at job options, they don't consider agriculture because they tend to think of it as being a production-oriented career. So part of our program is to really help people move away from that idea of production as being what agriculture is, and look at the broader arena of
So
the topic.
your program actually then goes beyond the elementary and middle school. It can go up into high school or even college.
Yeah, and when you look at the learner outcomes, we've tried to sequence learner outcomes in terms of history and culture and the environment and economics and careers. And in reality, we want to do more and more with junior and senior high science teachers and American history and government and economics, because agriculture ties into all of them, especially in this day and age with all of the technology and science areas. But what you have is you have science teachers out there that aren't necessarily real comfortable with sustainable agriculture or best management practices or biotechnology or some of the issues in agriculture. And so we have to do more work in the future with training and in-servicing teachers so that they can bring that message into their classroom.
I was fascinated when you showed me this. What did the Department of Education say when the Department of Ag approached it about integrating learner outcomes in this format? You talk about literacy in here. You have a wonderful bibliography. It is one of the most professional pieces of educationese that I have seen in a long, long time.
Well, I think the first of all, we had good support from the State Board of Education and from some of the leaders in the department. But when I first talked to the people that work with outcome-based education, they said, oh, you need to go talk to vocational agriculture. And I get that message when I exhibit at superintendent's conferences or wherever. Oh, agriculture is down the hall, or you have to go talk to
So
the
you're
whole ag
thinking of
teacher.
what the program that I used to think of as Future Farmers of
Right,
America.
and
or
they're still
that.
out there. They're out there in lesser numbers than they were years and years ago, because we really have only about 2% of the people producing the food. But the first thing the people even in the Department of Ed mentioned and thought of was the connection to the formal ag program. When you talk to them and get them to understand all of the integration opportunities, then they light up and they see the connections. And these two here, Jan and Maria, are much closer to the actual practical work with outcomes. But really, agriculture can be worked with in any subject.
That's true.
And that's really basic, to be making connections, understanding why certain things happen.
Is Barton involved with OBE, outcome-based education, at this time?
Yes.
Why don't you
We
just
have been
give
for a
us
long
a
time.
quickie description of that for those of us who went to school before there were such things?
Well, you're basically looking at where it is that you want to take the students and thinking about where you want to end up, and then your teaching is geared toward how you want to end up, and that's authentic assessment. You want to have the children demonstrate some knowledge of something through model building or something other than a test.
Not just
Something more-
memorizing the chief products of Minnesota. Well,
No.
you brought some wonderful things with you today. Are these examples of what you would consider the product that the student made after studying about agriculture, for instance?
Well, yes. I had finished this corn unit, and one of my colleagues said, oh, MJ, just write this up. And I said, oh, I don't know. And she said, sure, go do it. Look here. And she pulled out the Ag Mag, and she said, you can get a mini grant for writing this up. So I did.
And this is the corn timeline and the types of popcorn?
Right. This is the maize, my integrated thematic maize unit. And what you've got there is the one cooperative group chose to study corn by looking at it from a historical perspective. Where did corn originate and what's happened to it now? And so they found out that corn dates back to 2000 BC and in a bat cave in Mexico, which is really a burial cave, and that the corn was only an inch long, and that the first corn out there was popcorn. I mean, we really got into some particularly nifty information, that it was grown 20 centuries even before Christ, and that it was the foundation of the Aborigine Americans, and that culture was founded on corn.
So which subject areas did you bring this unit out in?
Brought it out in science, in history, We had types of popcorn, so we had a hands-on experience popping corn. And we looked at black and calico and Indian corn and yellow, white, and strawberry. And we found after popping all of them, equal amounts of course, and charting using our math skills and our measurement skills, that yellow corn and white corn are definitely the most common, and they pop to the greatest volume.
Which is why we see that more in the stores, right?
And that's why we see it. And that strawberry corn doesn't pop at all. It's pretty. And the calico.
I didn't know there was such a thing.
Calico and the black don't pop much at all either.
And so then the dolls represent art,
They sure do.
bringing ag into art.
And so I created some little beginning, dolls here, and the students would use fabric from the classroom and make little bonnets, and they would take a piece of wood and drill a nail through it and then stick the corn cob on the nail and create their own little characters. So
What MJ's referencing is a program that Ag in the Classroom sponsors, and it's a mini grant program for teachers, so that they can get dollars for projects that they want to pursue for bringing agriculture into their classroom. And we've been at that 3 years now and have monies available for teachers. And whether it's Duluth or Blue Earth or Wilmer or Minneapolis, we have opportunities for teachers and can help them maybe launch a project that they wouldn't do if they didn't have our help. With school budgets these days, money is tight for field trips, for purchasing materials, and we are a program that can help them in that area and also promote the integration of agriculture. The quilt behind me, the Charlotte's Web quilt, is an example of a project in Duluth this year where a second grade teacher used literature in Charlotte's Web and the characters in that as a theme for doing an agriculture unit.
Which is an
and
amazing
involved the
combination.
kids. Yeah, yeah.
I would think that just the imagination to write a grant for an agriculture program using Charlotte's Web was kind of unique when you received it.
Yeah, well, it was, and really, to be honest with you, sometimes I'm amazed at the value and the quality of work that you get out of the teachers, given that they're busy. A lot of them develop their curriculum and their materials after school or in the summer in their own extra time, which tells you that they're movers and shakers, and you'd like to have more of those teachers out there. The map on the other side of the set was another unit that was done, and actually has a written unit and flashcards that go with it to tie in all of the commodities and information for the teacher. So it's a combined visual unit as well as a hands-on for the kids and information for the teacher.
And this was done by a teacher, this Minnesota Agriculture map.
Yeah, that actually was a project, again, this was also a Duluth project that was done several years ago, and they did several of those units and placed them in their media centers for use in the schools.
I saw things on there that I never thought of Minnesota producing, so.
The exciting thing as we look at some of the projects, though, is that agriculture is such a natural topic for really any subject area in the classroom. We've been talking about the integration, and it just fits really very well with anything a teacher chooses to work with, and also the various styles that she may be using in her classroom, whether it's whole language or whether it's experiential learning or whether it's
history. We've talked about history.
Right.
Yes.
What would you we'll start with Jan, what would you tell other teachers out there, or tell teachers out there that either are watching this show or may have something in mind? What would you be telling them to do or to think about in terms of agriculture and their classroom work?
I think the first thing I would like to encourage them to do is to not think of agriculture as being a topic that's foreign, because if they get a little further into it, they will see that it's really a very user-friendly type of topic. And if we eat, and if we wear clothing, and if we live in houses made of wood and those things, we are intimately involved with agriculture in our daily lives anyway. So maybe many of the activities that they can work through are things that they already know or things that they're doing. It's not something to be a little bit fearful about getting involved with. It's really a natural for a lot of learning in the classroom.
Well, MJ, what about the teachers who think not another subject to talk about? I think
That's a
you've
good
made a
one.
real
That's
good
a good one.
case for how it fits in with everything else. Do you think that in the overburdened life of the average teacher, that this fits right in?
Well, I think we need to start thinking, if we haven't started thinking already, about thematic education and integrated learning. And so if you have to teach, or if you choose to teach something about, say, the water cycle, this is a natural to consider talking about soil erosion, wind erosion, water, conservation. We're all concerned about the environment, so it's a natural and it will fit in beautifully.
What sort of things are you going to be developing in the future? Continue with the environmental?
Well, we
sorts
will
of things,
continue. The AgMag series is fairly entrenched now. This is our 7th year, and I get calls in September from teachers asking, when is it going to arrive, and we've been real consistent over the years. We'll continue within the magazine to cover a real variety of topics, from how food gets to your table, to global connections, to the environment. We will be continuing to work in the outcome-based area, but we need to and want to do more with teacher in-servicing and with working with colleges of education, so that you can get beyond the notion that agriculture is over there and it isn't part of all of our daily lives. And the important thing, I think, for teachers is not to treat it as this separate subject. There's not a 1 o'clock time slot for agriculture.
Right.
You just don't drop everything else. It's not mandated. And the important thing, as Minnesota even becomes more urban-based, how is it relevant to the kids' daily life? They're never going to be a producer. They may never be in a career. But how, when they get up in the morning and when they go to school, are they part of agriculture? And then they will begin to understand that connection and appreciate that interdependence.
And that does become important as these young people grow and become the people who make the decisions, the political decisions, and the voting types of responsibilities. Are they agriculturally literate for the kinds of decisions that we'll need to make as future citizens?
That's an important point to bring up, because I know there's been concern expressed about, as the population shifts, the majority of legislators, of course, will be from the metropolitan area. So we want them, of course, to know
Yep.
what's
And they
happening.
likely will not have a full range of experience with agriculture.
Have you had a reaction from the legislature on this? Do they know about it? Are they on your subscription list?
Yeah, the Senate and House Ag committees and the education committees and much of the leadership is on our mailing list. And they get deluged with material also,
sure.
and you also try to make personal contacts. And I work with the board of directors and committees, and we make connections that way, and also the support through the Department of Agriculture. But you need to educate and keep informing people. You can't assume that people know what you're about, and you need to keep it in front of them. But we are losing that rural base. Even the vocational agriculture programs that have been very strong over the years have shifted some of their focus in terms of their original curriculum and movement to tying in the environment and natural resources and aquaculture and other alternatives, horse management, so to keep their student base involved, because there are lesser number of kids that are going to stay around home and produce and farm.
My students were particularly interested in ostrich farming. That was another very, very interesting article that you had. If you want to do any more follow-up work on that, it'd be well received.
Right.
That was fun. We do have some ostrich farmers in Minnesota.
Who does your research? Do you know? Because you're...
Well, we've
There's a-
developed a
yeah.
good base over the years. Jan, by virtue of her background and for some of the other writing that she does, we watch the paper, and there was a thing the other day on global population growth. I pulled it out and put it in the file because it all has to do with agriculture as we have more people to feed. But I get support, and the program gets support from all of the commodity groups, the ag organizations, business, industry, the university. We really never get a no from anybody in terms of material and help. So that base of support is out there.
Well, when you can explain to them how what you're doing fits into exactly their programs, that would be obvious. The global connection, what is that, MJ?
Well, this is a page from a former issue, and I don't know if you can see this, but it shows how interconnected we are with our exports and imports, and how big a role really Minnesota and the Midwest plays in the production of wheat and feed grains and soybeans and soy products and beef and pork, and how many people we really feed. It was interesting that over in the Persian Gulf nations of Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and that, they import 70% of the agriculture products. And
at least I tend to think of it as a one-way thing. We are just importing their oil. That's
Yeah. Well, in Japan also, you know, given an island and the population they have,
Well,
a lot of exports.
everything is clearly written. It's concise. The graphics are good. There are puzzles and games, and that's Jan's. But it's a well-integrated newsletter and magazine too. So.
Well, it is a group project.
Yes.
Thanks for the credit, but it is a group project.
Do you get suggestions from children?
Occasionally, yes, we do. We have a write-in opportunity for them each time where we encourage them to get involved in certain projects and to let us know how those turned out. And that's fun. When we get feedback from them, then we try to share some of the results that they've had with their projects.
And they also run, in terms of readability, they have some kids that they work with so that we can always try to be writing for the right audience and kind of sound them out as to, a lot of times we might be narrow-minded and write for you and I, but you have to put it into kid terms.
Well, sort of a focus group right there. Sounds like a very, very well thought out project. We've got just a couple of minutes left.
Okay.
Al, do you have a last word for the audience? Do you have a last?
My only last
idea
word would be that we're working with a lot of teachers around the state, not only with the magazine series, but with other areas. And certainly any teacher that's interested in working with the integration of agriculture should get to me.
And
we
we'll
can
have
give
that number on after the program.
We can give them background information and help. And I just think there's many opportunities untapped out there.
Well, obviously, and don't forget libraries when you're doing this too.
We have worked with libraries for several years, and also non-public schools. A lot of educational groups maybe forget those audiences, and we've tried to work with them. And homeschooling is a big one.
I would think so. Well, thank you all very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Agriculture in the classroom is a unique way of bringing agriculture into the lives of our children, rural or urban. Thanks Al Withers, MJ Savaiano, and Jan Hoppe. Thanks to all of you for joining us on All About Kids. Please tune in again.
This has been a presentation of Hennepin County Library in conjunction with the Twin Cities Metropolitan Library Service Agency. We thank you for watching, and we hope you visit your public library often.